tell you something else I couldn't believe today, and that's reading about a change in leadership with the terror group Hamas, as reported by the UK Telegraph. Now, I suppose it's news that Khalil al-Hayya is the new leader of the terrorist organisation we know as Hamas. But reading this article in the Telegraph, you can see the headline there. If we can just go back to the headline for a second, it says Hamas's new leader lost 4 sons to Israeli bombs. Now, that immediately got my attention because I thought, what sort of article is this? It sounds like a puff piece for a terrorist organisation, and I got to say, I was not disappointed. An almost 1,000-word article only used the word terrorist or terrorist group twice in 1,000 words. Typically, it just referred to Hamas as a group, and basically it humanised Hamas when that's the last thing we should be doing in the West. Let me read you a couple of portions. The article said, the new leader, who has lost multiple relatives to Israeli strikes, took the post after an unusually fraught contest, talking about the Hamas election. Just note there, he lost multiple relatives to Israeli strikes. But here's what's interesting. The article not once mentions the Hamas slaughter of 1,200 Israelis on October the 7th, which is why those strikes from Israel took place. The article goes on to talk about the Hamas election process. Have a look at this. The election process began in January and was repeatedly interrupted by the wars in Iran and Lebanon and by continuing Israeli operations in Gaza. If you didn't know what Hamas did on October 7, 2023, you'd think, gee, those Israelis interrupting democracy in Gaza. The article goes on to say that this new terror leader, his eldest son, Osama, daughter-in-law and 3 grandchildren were killed in the bombing of the family home during the 2014 war. Now, it makes no mention of the fact that the 2014 war began when Hamas kidnapped and slaughtered 3 Israeli teenagers. That was the beginning of that 52-day war. Israel punished Hamas severely, as you would expect. The article continues like that. I could show you more quotes. We don't have time. But I don't like the way it centred suffering amongst Hamas leaders as if there's a moral equivalent between their suffering and that of the Israelis. Hamas leadership brought suffering upon themselves, and asking the public to feel sorry for them, I think, is abhorrent.
But sorry, I just want to double-check that, because you said 2014 war. Osama, daughter-in-law and 3 grandchildren were killed in the bombing of the family home during the 2014 war. Mm-hmm. That's not October. Were you just talking about October 7?
Well, both. This article refers to his leadership of Hamas now and the fact that his election to the leadership of Hamas was interrupted by Israeli bombing in Gaza.
Yeah.
Well, Israel are bombing Gaza because of what Hamas did on October 7. Then it goes on to talk about how he's also lost relatives, not just in this latest conflict, but back in 2014.
Right.
Well, they kidnapped 3 Israeli teenagers, shot them dead. Then Israel went in to retaliate. But there's no mention of that.
Look, I disagree with you on this. I mean, we've seen some shocking examples of anti-Israel bias over the past couple of years, but I don't think this is one of them. This, to me, is just a factual
They're not including all the facts, though.
But what are you talking about? His biography.
10,000 words if you're going to put everything that's ever happened.
How could you have a 1,000-word article about Hamas and say nothing about October 7?
Yeah, because you'd have to live under a rock if you don't know that October 7...
A lot of people live under rocks these days. Have you seen a pro-Palestinian protest?
But you know, OK, an example of an actual piece that I would say is biased was what the New York Times did when the Ayatollah was killed. And then their headline was Hardline Cleric Who Made Iran a Regional Power. That is bias. This is just a basic factual play-by-play of Khalil al-Hayya's life.
You're trying to generate sympathy for a terrorist
rubbish
leader.
it is, James.
No.
The
Hamas's new leader lost 4 sons to Israeli bombs.
James, the Telegraph is probably the last remaining conservative newspaper in England, right?
That's why I was so disappointed to read this.
And having read the entire report, and you've read out 3 paragraphs of it, it is a factual report of what has happened. And the context of what you read out about the deaths, which are directly related, I think, are pertinent information to him becoming leader of Hamas. It goes on, following the paragraphs you read, to then detail interactions that the United States have had, that Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff have had in their negotiations with Hamas, and how they directly used this stuff as part of their negotiations.
Yes.
So I think it is entirely relevant to the fact that the US is part of this war, that this guy is now the leader of Hamas, that the US is a major part of negotiations and will be in future on anything that happens in the Middle East. I don't think any of it served to humanise him. Having read the article, and I'd be fully with you if I thought that's what I read. But the article was not designed to humanise him. It was a factual report of what has happened and the context of what that means for him now being the leader with other Western nations that will deal with him. I did not read anything in that article that made me think it was a puff piece to humanise the new leader of Hamas at all.
I don't see how you can talk about the election process in Gaza being interrupted by continuing Israeli option.
Well, it's true.
But it's true. But it's true though. But that's not offensive to Jews in any way. It's just a fact of what has occurred. And I also don't think about talking about the election process in itself as anything controversial. It's a play-by-play of what has occurred over the last couple of months.
I disagree.
And I think that both Caleb and I are very quick to point out the bias in the media when it comes to being anti-Israel, pro-Palestine. But this is just not one of them.
Your point about US negotiations, that's about 2/3 of the way through the article. They've got to establish who this guy is. That's my point. But they don't refer to him as a terrorist leader. They don't refer to him as someone who's slaughtered 1,200 Jews by invading Israel. They refer to him as a grieving father, and we're supposed to feel sorry for this terrorist.
The intention of the article is not to make you feel sorry for him. It is to inform you as to why he would want to lead that organisation. I think it is informative as to who this man is. It's not saying, oh, he's a wonderful chap and we should all now love him. It's simply saying this is the context of this guy. This is his involvement with Hamas. He's now risen up to this position. That will obviously inform things he does as the leader of Hamas. This is the interactions he's had with the United States, which has been directly related to these things that have happened to his family. I think it's all just pertinent information.
Paspin ka panashi, makhjizama pat paspin ka panashi, sabar ba mizrasta da didanshi, sabar ba mizrasta da didanshi, makhjizama pat paspin ka panashi, makhjizama pat paspin ka panashi, sabar ba mizrasta da didanshi, sabar ba mizrasta da didanshi. Sabar ba mizrasta da didanshi, makhjizama pat paspin ka panashi, makhjizama pat paspin ka panashi, sabar ba mizrasta da didanshi, sabar ba mizrasta da didanshi. پسپین کپن شي صبر با مزرستا د دیدن شي صبر با مزرستا د دیدن شي پختنا ولې ناراضي اوس مې په پختنا ولې ناراضي اوس مې په پختنا ولې ناراضي اسه به خراب د مینې خوان شي صبر به مې زستا د دیدن شي مخ چې زما پټ پسپین کپن شي مخ چې زما پټ پسپین کپن شي صبر به مې زستا د دیدن شي صبر به مې زستا د دیدن شي د برباد عبدل زرین کړما اسه د برباد عبدل زرین کړما اسه د برباد عبدل زرین کړما په आवाज د خالد شاه مزر پیوان شي صبر با مزر ستاد دیدن شي مخ چې زما پټ پسپین کپن شي مخ چې زما پټ پسپین کپن شي صبر با مزر ستاد دیدن شي صبر با مزر ستاد دیدن شي